Well, I will say this in football in particular, when you're competing for World Cups or Olympics or Euros or, a qualifying event, you really don't need much more than to understand what's at stake. I mean, it's your entire reason for participating. It's something that you put all your time and your energy and your heart into. And when it's time to go, when it's time to start and really compete for those things, it's really easy to get excited about it. It's really easy to get into it. But what also happens sometimes is there's often teams that really struggle with the higher the stakes, the more difficult it is for them to perform and to compete. And for me, it's always been something where, I have this really narrow focus, like laser-like focus on the task at hand, and just really making sure that I only concern myself with what I can control. Because it's really, really difficult to try to control a teammate or try to control a colleague and what they're doing. If you're someone and you're participating on that high level team or that high level event, just control what you could control. Remember the fundamentals of what you're good at and play to strength. I think it's important to realize that you might make mistakes. I mean, of course, we've all seen when we see, Euros on TV or World Cups or Olympic Games, there's mistakes all over the place. There's always errors made. But if you allow yourself to say, hey, you know what, I just may not have been my best on that play, or I may not be able to compete at this level on this one thing, but what can I do? Like, what can I control? How can I contribute, even if I'm not my best at this particular thing? And so I feel like that's really important, to just really narrow the focus for yourself. But also in terms of being a teammate, it's also really important to communicate with your other teammates and your other employees and workmates, because you're all doing this as a team. And maybe you're struggling on the day and you're like, hey, can you help me out a little bit? I'm having a hard time. And if you're that person who's willing to share how you're feeling, if you're willing to be vulnerable and really buy into it, it's amazing where you can go. Well, leadership is really, really interesting to me, because with my history and playing on the national team, we used to talk about piano players and piano carriers. So especially on a sports team, and also I think in business, there's going to be times when your leadership role is to be out front, to be seen, to be visible. And you're the one maybe on stage, or you're the one that's, bringing up the group, and you're the one leading the pack in that particular event or that particular project that you're doing. And your role as a leader is to really be dialed in, to encourage and to help other people to come along and do the best that they can and bring their best selves to the group, to the event. But on the other hand, there's also times when you're leading from the back, or you're carrying the piano, for example, like I said. And so piano carriers are just as important as the piano player. So if you're playing a supporting role, or if you're normally the leader on a project, but this particular project you're not, always understand and remember that everybody's role is important. So if you're carrying the piano in that particular instance, you have to do the best you can at what your role is at that time. Don't sulk, don't, bring everybody down, don't complain. Be positive, be understanding that in this particular instance, your job, your role as a leader is to support. And it's just as important. So I think a lot of people misunderstand what being a leader means. And a lot of times the biggest leader on the team for sports is not the person with the captain's armband on their arm. A lot of times it's somebody who is just really calm, someone who is dependable, somebody who really is supportive and a fantastic teammate. And oftentimes that person is the MVP and not necessarily the person that you would normally expect. Absolutely. I mean, I have several instances, but one of my most, I would say, most difficult ones is the one I usually tend to share. And so going into the 99 World Cup, I was number one goalkeeper on the team and arguably the best goalkeeper in the world at the time. And we obviously won that 99 World Cup in very dramatic fashion, as everybody may recall. And it was amazing. And we really changed the landscape of the sport in our country and around the world, of what women could do and what footballers could do overall, and the importance of the game in this community and in this country. But after that, all of a sudden I was famous, right? So after that game, everybody knew me, they recognized me, and I was doing all this traveling back and forth from one coast to the other coast and all these different events. And I lost track of what was most important at the time. I was really feeding into all the hoopla and the fame, and I call it, I was drinking my own Kool-Aid, basically. And so I was really diving into that. But what I wasn't doing was I wasn't being, tight and fit on what I was eating. I wasn't being in the gym. I wasn't being understanding and being the Briana Scurry that I needed to be in terms of the footballer. I was really soaking in all this fame. And before you knew it, I had gained 25 pounds over the course of several months because I wasn't focusing on what I needed to focus on. I wasn't keeping at least a standard that was really high of what I was doing. And so I ended up losing my position the very next year. And in that Olympics in 2000, I didn't play a single minute in that Olympic Games just 1 year later. And for me, that was a very humbling experience. And I wasn't just like sad, I was angry. And the key there was I was angry at outside people. I was angry at my coach. I was angry that my teammates weren't standing up for me and going to bat for me. I was angry about all these different things. And it wasn't until I got a picture in the mail from a reporter who wanted me to sign an autograph that I saw what the truth was. And the truth was I was the one that I should be angry at, because I was the one that sabotaged my success. I was the one that took my eye off the ball. And so at that minute, when I saw that picture, I knew what I had to do. So I had to basically change everything. I started, working out more. I basically lived at the gym. I started researching online. How can I better my nutrition? How can I better my strength? What types of activities can I do to make myself a better goalkeeper? And I wanted to be the best Briana Scurry I could be, not just better than the second or third string goalkeeper. I wanted to be the best me I could be. And so when I made that change and decided that I was the one that I could control that I was the one that was going to make the effort to be the best me I could be, then I was actually better than the 1999 Briana. So in the next couple of years, I really made a change, and I took responsibility for the fact that I let my teammates down. I let myself down. I let my coach down, and I apologized, and I took ownership of my role in the situation. And I was, in fact, better in 2004 than I was in 99, even though that Olympic Games wasn't seen as much by people and it wasn't as amazing of a finish or as impactful, but I was a better Briana Scurry. And that was because I overcame that adversity that I myself had caused with the sabotage of my fitness and of my understanding and of my focus. And so for me, it's a really interesting story because I think people like it because I'm really being vulnerable with what happened. And a lot of times people don't even want to talk about it when it doesn't go their way. When something goes sideways, oftentimes you really figure out what you're made of and who you are. And, when you have a lot of success, you don't look at it, you don't scrutinize it, you don't look at it under a microscope like you do when you're having, difficulty or you're having failure. So for me, I really got to know who I was in that time when I was struggling. And I feel like I became a stronger person because of it. Whew. So one of the biggest shifts in mindset is When something goes wrong or sideways or difficulty, for me, for example, when a goal was scored, I learned this thing called putting it on the shelf. And it was my sports psychologist for the team is the one that taught me that. She said, look, you're in a game, you're in a situation, something goes wrong. Instead of brooding on it, instead of lamenting it, put it in a little box in your mind and put it on the shelf. And you have between the time the goal is scored to the whistle blows for the play to begin again to be upset about it. But as soon as that whistle blows, you put it on the shelf. Because in soccer in particular, one thing bleeds into the other. If a player or a team can't just get over what just happened, oftentimes they'll have another goal scored against them and then another. And before you know it, it's a cascade of things that you don't want to happen. And in part because you kept thinking about the thing that was already in the past. You let the past bleed into the future and the present. And so for me, that was a fantastic thing to learn. And I talk about that to kids all the time, because when you're a goalkeeper, it's hard to hide once a goal has been scored on you because everybody's looking at you. But if you make yourself understand that you are more difficult to score on after a goal is scored instead of being more easy to score on, then you'd be surprised how you can bring your team out of the situation. And so when you watch games and you see the best goalkeepers, whether it's soccer or hockey or basketball or whatever, you see people have a difficult situation and they just forget about it and they move on. And so in other sports, they say, have a mentality of a goldfish, basically. Just move on to the next thing. Don't worry about your errors. The best players, the greatest players in different sports are able to do that. And that is so vitally important for someone who is understanding that and plays in a position that is so highly visible, like a goalkeeper or a captain or whatever it is. If you can just put that thing on the shelf, because in sports nowadays, you videotape everything. You can deal with it later. But what you don't want is for a game that's 1-0 to end up being 3-0 because you didn't let it go. So for me, one of the most important things I learned in sports psychology and techniques to get myself out of a situation is to put it on the shelf. Oh, well, so for me, I made a lot of impact the first 40 years of my life with my teammates and on the national team, whether it was Olympic team or World Cup team. We made an impact and a ripple effect for millions of young girls and boys and everywhere, all over the world. So in this current 40 years of my life, I have basically used speaking as my sport. Speaking is my craft. So when I go into a speech, I prepare properly. I have a meeting with the people who've hired me because I want my speech to be very, very memorable. And for folks, when they see me speak and they hear me speak, that they think to themselves, yeah, she was a great speaker. I got something out of that. So I'm very intentional about that. And so when I go into a venue and I'm hired by someone, I am a steward of their confidence. I am a steward of the financial outlay that they did and the faith and trust that they had in me to come to their event and speak and inspire and connect with whoever's in that room. And it's an important thing to me. So I prepare for a speech the same way I used to prepare for a game. What can I control? I want to have the right words to reach the person that I need to reach. And so when I'm done speaking, people feel like, that hour or however long was worth it. Because so many times in this day and age, from what I'm told, when you have speakers, they're talking about their agendas and they have certain things that they want to discuss. And there's a lot of things that's necessary for. But for me, I want you to see in my journey yourself. Hey, she went through this difficult thing and I'm going through something difficult. And she just said, let me try this or do that. Or yeah, my friend is really struggling with her mental health. Maybe I can just go and listen. She said, it's important to listen and not try to fix her. I'm just going to go and listen and be a good friend. Or hey, my kid's really struggling with this or that in school. Maybe I could just sit her down and say, hey, honey, tell me what's on your mind, what's on your heart. And so when I go and I speak with people, I want them to be able to take away from that speech something that they can use in their life. And I want them to see a piece of themselves in me. And so that is how I make a bigger impact than I made in the first 40 years of my life in the second 40 years on the stage.